Hello everybody and welcome to another video here at Playing Board Games. Today I have my blind play review for Children of Blood. Travis, Bryn, and I played it a few days ago. We did the whole campaign in one sitting, and honestly, I had a really good time with it. I really liked it. We're going to do, as always, a spoiler-free section and a spoiler section, so I think we just dive in and start doing this. So, overall, I liked the campaign, and I was a fan of the shorter campaign format. I'm going to just put a little bit of, like, I'm going to kind of nip it in the bud here. I'm not going to sound as excited as I did for Feast of Hemlock Vale. Feast of Hemlock Vale has become one of my favorite campaigns, and a big reason for that was that Feast of Hemlock Vale was very thematic in its design, and Children of Blood is definitely more of a mechanical design first and foremost than it is a thematic design. And I don't necessarily think that that is a negative for Children of Blood, or I mean even in the grand scheme of things, beyond my own opinion, a positive for Feast of Hemlock Vale to be more thematically designed, just kind of to talk about that here. But I'm just going to say this right now, that while I resonate more with like a thematic focused design to an Arkham Horror campaign, and I definitely am going to sound a little bit like with Hemlock Vale. I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. I really enjoyed Children of Blood. I think it's a very solid campaign. It's mechanically, actually, the longer that I've sat with it, I am enjoying the mechanics of it a lot more. I think there's some really cool mechanical things here. I just wanted to nip that in the bud, because I know there's a lot of eyes on this mini campaign, right? There's a lot of like thought process about what this means for the future of Arkham and yada yada yada, and I just wanted to kind of just get it out here right now. I liked Children of Blood. Travis, Bryn, and I, it was a fun time playing it together. I look forward to playing with it some more, and I think I'm just gonna like get that out there right now. I enjoyed Children of Blood. It was very fun, and I am looking back at the scenarios with it in fondness, because I think they are mechanically meaty. There's a lot of cool stuff to discover, and I think that this is a very simple campaign with a lot of really cool kind of like flourishes on it. Now, this has been on the screen for a bit, but overall I was actually a fan of the shorter campaign format. I did not know how I was going to feel about the shorter campaign format until I played it. And this is something that I've been saying countlessly in the videos that I was talking, when I was talking about the news. There was a lot of like doomsaying early on about this, and I mean, I think this is entirely going to be a preference thing. I think that if you don't like the 3 scenario campaigns, I don't think they're ever going to be for you, right? I think that if you have a personal thought that 3 scenarios is too short, I think the reality is that as long as they keep printing them, they might not be for you, right? So it's like one of those things where I think you're going to find out pretty quick if they work or if they don't for you. And I actually thought that it was really nice. I think there are some definite upsides that I personally see for myself in how I approach these shorter campaigns. And I actually think that it was a nice way to play an Arkham campaign, which was Travis, Britt, and I built our decks before, like, we got together. We quickly put our decks together. We played this with Chapter 2 only. We played the 3 scenarios, and I took apart the decks when we were done, right? Like, that was actually, like, just a very fun way to play Arkham. We were like, who wants to play what? We put them together, ran through the campaign, and then it was done, right? So it's not like one of those things where we had to keep coming back to it every week. And while I still like that, obviously, for Arkham Horror, like a longer campaign would definitely be my preference in comparison to only shorter campaigns, right? But like, I actually enjoyed the 3 scenario campaign format. I think one thing that really factored into this was that the scenarios were longer. The scenarios were generally longer than what you would see in the longer campaign format. And I'm not saying that this is like, it's not like equally in the time that is in the longer campaign format. The longer campaign format is still longer, but like when they design a standalone scenario, for example, those generally run, their aim, as you can see when they release, is like 90 minutes to 2 hours for like 3 to 4 players, right? That's kind of like what they aim to have. And that is what we spent on this one. I think we spent like Actually, let's see if I can quickly check. Do I have it open or did I close it? No, I closed it. But it was like 90 minutes for the first scenario, 2 hours for the second scenario, and like an hour 15 for the third scenario. So still there was a lot of Arkham to be had, and we were able to all interact with our decks in a variety of different ways, because while we were earning less XP and playing less scenarios, the scenarios themselves were longer, which meant that there was more time to interact with the deck and the deck's goal. For example, I brought a Joe Diamond deck, and I tried something new with it that I probably wouldn't have tried in a full campaign, and I was able to just get that experience all in at once. If you want to watch our blind play, it's actually currently live on More Playing Board Games. There's a link down in the video description if you did want to watch us play. Now, of course, I will also admit that I am in a slightly privileged Arkham position where I get to like grind about a bunch of Arkham with a variety of different people. So I'm not like saying you have to enjoy the shorter campaign formats like I do, but this is just like some further context for why I actually did end up enjoying it, and I'm very intrigued to see how they continue to explore it. It felt like a short story, right? Where like an Arkham campaign feels like a novella or like a novel in some cases, if there is enough meat to the campaign. But like Children of Blood felt like a short story that was boom, boom, boom. We hit all the notes, and then the story ended. And I think I have a point later on. I'm not gonna dive too much deeper into that right now. So, each scenario had an interesting hooker mechanic, but none were particularly standouts to me in the blind play. Each were fun, but mechanically simple. When I talked about mechanically simple, I mean like there's not like, for example, the winds in the Obsidian Canyons like you see in Drowned City. There's no car you need to drive. There's no mine cart you need to go through. They're all pretty like equivalent to a normal Arkham campaign, like mechanics that you've seen in like scenarios that we would generally call very simple. But I think as a whole, the campaign is mechanically dense. So this was what I was talking about earlier. This was like a mechanically forward campaign, and it was a vibe I couldn't shake. And then I read the design notes, and Nick, the designer of this, even said that he is a mechanically focused designer, and it makes total sense. You can see that there was like all these moving pieces that were like very small and very simple, but when you watch them all kind of click together, you're like, holy hell, it's a clock, you know? You take the gear individually, you're like, that's a gear, I know what that is, but then you like put it in with this one, and this one, and this one, and start spinning, you're like, wait a minute, I see the kind of why it's all coming together and why now I can tell time, right? And I think that like this is where I also talk about like the thematic difference. I fell in love with Hemlock because of the really like thematic moments. Like there's one in Hemlock where like light and dark, the day and night matters for like moon or not moon, and when you have to like pull enemies into the light, it was like it told such a story for me. I don't think that these scenarios inherently tell a story in the same sort of way, but none of them were I enjoyed all of them, is really what it comes down to. None of them I would consider to be bad scenarios or that I would want to avoid playing, because they were kind of just like a playground for you to play Arkham, and they each actually had a very good sense of pace to them, which I think was ultimately really cool. Again, like there's not too many like, I mean, like I guess you could say there was an interesting hook to the final scenario, especially if you haven't not played like as much Arkham as I have. I could see like, especially like a newer player really aligning with that final scenario. But for me, it's kind of like, not like, I'm not saying like stuff that I've seen before, but I'm like, okay, this is another scenario with this kind of style, this kind of pacing, right? That's where it comes down to. But what's important as well is that each scenario was fun. So as we kind of guy here. So like no crazy like I'm in a car or I'm in a minecart or even like, ooh, there are scary bugs that are growing bigger. It's just like there are nice little like fun scenarios that are mechanically simple but come together in the grand scheme of things to be very interesting, I think anyway. There seems to be a good amount of replayability in the campaign with the difficulty options and scenario setups. I'm excited to play it again. And I think that's really like what all we can really ask from a review and on my spoiler-free like blind play review, is that I am very much excited to do another run of Children of Blood. We played on standard difficulty with the Chapter 2 card pool. We said afterwards that, well, I said beforehand that if we won on the standard difficulty with the Chapter 2 card pool, we would run it on hard next. And I think that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to run hard with the standard card, so the Chapter 2 card pool instead of standard difficulty. And I think that overall, as an experiment to try to make difficulty matter, I think that this campaign was a success due to the fact that I actually want to play on hard. For the first time in Arkham, I want to actually play a campaign on hard. Not just because, you know, like, to make it harder. My choice to make things more difficult is to make my card pool smaller, add weird deck building stipulations that I need to follow, that kind of thing. But rather instead, I want to actually play on hard, and a campaign has never made me do that. So overall, I think that this was a successful experiment. There is also, as mentioned, replayability in some of the campaign setups for like the scenario setups. Specifically, the second scenario is kind of modal, which is really neat. I'm excited to try to play the other version. And while I think that the linking decisions between the scenarios are drier than they are in a full-length campaign, I think there are enough interesting little things that can happen and things you can earn, things you can miss out on, that I think provide that feeling of replayability that goes beyond, for example, Brethren of Ash or Night of the Zealot. I think there's more meat on the bones, so to speak, here in terms of the replayability in comparison to those earlier campaigns. While I never felt like inspired to play Night of the Zealot or even Brethren of Ash multiple times, I think that there is more for Children of Blood that would make me want to run through it, especially because I can like run the whole thing in one day, which I think for me is cool. But again, a little bit of like that Arkham content creator privilege there, so I have to acknowledge that. I'm a big fan of blood tokens. I adored that mechanic. I'm actually kind of bummed that they're only in this box as far as I know. I would love to see blood tokens come back. I understand they may not fit mechanically into other campaigns, like flavorful, so they may not fit thematically into other campaigns, but blood tokens are really good. They are very well designed. They are interacted with in great ways. They felt fun to put into the chaos bag, which is something I didn't really expect to actually just be like, any opportunity I could to put blood tokens in, I took them, like maybe like 95% of the time. And I wasn't scared of drawing them. It was kind of fun. I'm curious to see how I feel about them on the hard difficulty, mind you. But it's a very cool mechanic, and I think that it's one of the pieces, one of those gears that I mentioned that come together to make a clock. When you suddenly see everything, like you see the work that blood tokens are doing, and I think that it's like when you see it all come together, you're like, damn, that's really cool. I think it's a very well designed campaign. In terms of like scenario to scenario. So, and blood tokens are a major part of that because they're all interacted with, maybe not in like different ways. And obviously if this was a full length campaign, I would have loved to see more exploration of blood tokens. But honestly, I would just love to see more exploration of blood tokens in like another campaign because they are really damn cool. I think they're really neat. The treachery design in particular is very strong in this campaign, and I can see how players may have issues getting through them. We struggled a little bit. I think a part of that was due to the fact that I think two of the decks that we had of the three were kind of like just there for a little bit. They eventually did stuff, but they were kind of just there. And it always was a little bit tight. Like we were always like close to dying. This campaign, I think, was probably playtested with just the Chapter 2 cards, if I had to, like, wager on it. And you can kind of see how this can be very difficult. I think that this would be a harder campaign for players because there are a lot of ways to die. And I think that if they're just starting out on Arkham, I think that the Children of Blood is going to give you a hard time as you're trying to understand the tempo and all that kind of stuff. The enemies are strong, like they have like high health pools even for standard, and also because the treacheries hit really hard, and then you add blood tokens on top. There's a lot of like hard hitting stuff in this campaign, which I think is Really cool. Really cool. And so just something for you to know as a player. It might be a little bit trickier, especially if you're just starting out. Not that you shouldn't play it, mind you, because now there's a reason that if you play this on easy, it kind of scales down with you, and you can actually progress through it. You can play easy, beat it, standard, beat it, and then one day you're like, man, I'm crushing harder expert, and that's really cool. So I talked about that. No, this I haven't talked about. On first play, I'm impressed by the new scaling mechanics. This is actually something I did not know was going to be in there. But if you're playing on 3 or 4 players, there are extra cards added to the encounter deck. And boy, do they make things a little bit spicy, which I think is really cool. Yeah. It's a good thing, and I think that it was again something that I've actually talked about in the past, where I would love to see scaling for the encounter deck based on player count, because they're ultimately drawing more cards, so we could add more cards to it, and I think that it was a success on this first go of it. I really enjoyed it. Also, this is like my own personal preference. I am personally fine with the XP payout. I know a lot of people like having the XP to build a deck and then play that deck, but I think that, in my humble opinion, and I'm going to just say this, and you can feel free to disagree, you're not going to be able to convince me otherwise, but I think people like being OP, they like being strong, and XP makes your deck stronger at a rate that I think outpaces a lot of scenarios, so I think it's really nice to have campaigns that aren't as XP loaded. There's nothing wrong with enjoying being strong and crushing the game, but it's not my personal preference, so I am happy with the amount of XP that we got in this campaign. I think we got 18 XP by the time we were done, which felt very comfortable given how the scenarios challenged us. I wanted to talk a little bit about the story, because I've had some time to sit with it even after I made these slides, and I actually have been really resonating with the story over time. It's very simple. It's like very simple. It's like the writing snippets are very short. Travis said he was very happy about that. Travis isn't here for this video, but I will point out that Travis said that because, I think it is a preference that people have. They like the really short story snippets. But I think that there's actually a lot of themes underneath the story that's being told that I think are really interesting to kind of dig out when you spend some more time with it. I'm not going to dive into them here, but I'm just going to say, if you're a fan of like the detailed story, this campaign I think will ultimately let you down on that. But I think if you're a fan of just like a simple A to B to C story that's just like allowing you to play the scenarios, you're going to enjoy it. But I think ultimately in either case, I think there is some interesting stuff going on here that I think has some cool beats. The other thing that I'm actually very intrigued by was when I mentioned this was kind of like a short story, the pacing felt very different. Different in a way than even Brethren of Ash did. So like Brethren of Ash, let me try to explain this to you. They escalate, right? Where it goes like small encounter, biggest encounter, right? And that's a pretty standard pacing. We see that kind of in like our campaigns as well. But Children of Blood has a very interesting pacing for its scenarios and its story. For me personally, how I read it on the first one, it's like low stakes, highest stakes, medium stakes. And while it's like not what we're usually used to in a way a story is told, I do think that it made it more compelling and more interesting. When Travis, Brent, and I finished the campaign, I couldn't really put into words why I felt like what I was feeling, but I essentially was like, and I still don't really have the words for it without sounding a little bit pretentious, but the pacing feels a little bit more grown up. I don't know how to put it, right? It's like watching a movie where like the heroes just fight a guy, fight a harder guy, fight the hardest guy, right? But instead it's like you're faced with your big dramatic turmoil in the middle, and then the last one is like dealing with the ramifications, the fallout from this turmoil. It just feels like, again, I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but I don't know how else to put it. It feels more grown up. And I don't know, like, I don't know why, or like, I can't, it's a shitty review on that note, right? But that's ultimately how I feel about the pacing of the story. And like I said, it's been kind of growing on me over time. Like, this is not even about like the scenarios. This is literally just about like how the story kind of progresses through the scenarios and the pacing of the campaign. And it's very interesting, and I'm curious to see how I feel about it in the future. Okay. Oh, sorry, 1 second. We have one more point. It didn't look like there was an extra line there, but look at that. It's just hidden down there. While not my favorite blind play thematically, I enjoyed it mechanically. So this is kind of bookending the thing I said at the start to kind of beat it to the punch. While not my favorite blind play thematically, that goes to Hemlock Vale and obviously Path to Carcosa. Those two were bangers. I think it's in like the mid to higher quadrant on the mechanical blind play. I enjoyed it a lot more than Scarlet Keys. I enjoyed it more than Drowned City, and I've enjoyed it more than Edge of the Earth as well. I think Edge of the Earth thematically was really cool, but I do think that mechanically this one was a very fun time. One thing that I enjoy is when a scenario gives space for the players to have fun with it, space for the players to talk and engage with each other, and not just like quietly try to solve the puzzle of the game, or like the puzzle or like the mechanic of the scenario. It's a lot more enjoyable to me to have those types of scenarios. And I would say for the most part, 66% of the scenarios are like that. And then, like, the last one, while not being as simple as the others, is still relatively simple for the most part. But overall, to close out my spoiler-free review, thumbs up. I think that Children of Blood is very good, and I'm excited to play more of it. Now, if you don't want spoilers, this is the time to go away. Thanks for watching. I love you guys. Yada, yada, yada. GG's. You know the catchphrase. We're going to start doing spoilers. This one's not going to be too much longer. I actually don't know. I could say that it could be another 20 minutes. Who knows? But I kind of just want to go into some, like, kind of more detailed stuff that I really enjoyed. Alright, so the shorter campaign format and the scenarios, as I talked about here, River of Blood has the really cool kind of catching the lady, I forget her name, she's going to be on the next slide, Julia, like catching Julia in River of Blood I think is really cool. It was kind of fun to have like my knowledge, my Arkham knowledge, kind of like turned on its head, where it was like, we have to, do we damage her now or do we wait to try to damage her in the future? Because she goes away, is she going to lose the damage? And the answer is kind of, which I think is kind of neat. I think that this scenario is going to become more approachable in future plays, and ultimately I think that it has a lot of cool pieces. I think it's very simple, and I'm excited to play it on the harder difficulties. The standard difficulty allows locations that move, and I looked at the hard ones, they don't allow you to do that, so you kind of lose some of the action compression that you have there, which I think is going to make a notable difference. There's also like the one location that puts Doom instead of like not that. And then to burn down the other hiding places to make it easier to find her, you have to get 2 blood tokens in the bag as opposed to just 1. I think that's a really cool change. Overall, scenario River of Blood, I'd probably put it in like the good tier for a campaign. For scenario, actually, honestly, I don't think any of these would be in like my great tier if I made a tier list. Maybe New Horizons in the long term, but like New Horizons also seems very functionally different if you play it during the day or the night. But all of them, like none of them are going to be below good. Like maybe Blood Money is like the one I'm closest to fine on, but overall I think that they all have something that makes them interesting, and I'm curious to see how they go on the blind play. None of them I'm dreading on playing again, because again, they just let you play Arkham, which I think is really cool. New Horizons, we played during the night. You can choose day or night. I chose night because that seems like the better time to break into a meatpacking plant. The difficulty here is different bottom locations, I believe, and then also the Zubura Morte is also different as well. This is where I was talking about how like the pacing is very interesting, because it's kind of like in Depths of Yoth where you fight Yig before the story ends, and that's kind of how this one works, right? Because you have the confrontation with Zubura Morte in the basement of New Horizons, And it has such like a disgusting sort of vibe, right? Like you're in this meatpacking plant and you know there's something wrong, you know, people are getting hurt, and you keep exploring and you find out, oh, this is why people are getting fucked up, right? And I think that that's really cool. And then you kind of deal with the fallout of that discovery into the final scenario. The campaign kind of like puts it in like the story perspective of like you are finishing, like you are putting an end to this. But I think, like, to me, rather, it's like now the main bad guy is going to face the consequences of his actions, right? Like, there's something about it that just hits different. Overall, I think New Horizons was my favorite of the 3 scenarios. It's some nice classic Arkham with the version we played with a really cool, like, enemy. I think that this campaign really has 4 scenarios. Because I do feel like the New Horizons is going to be different. Which is also now not looking like a word. Is that how you spell horizons? Did I spell that wrong? But I'm curious to see how it plays in the day one, which I'm going to do on my next run. Blood Money had the cool mechanic of like parlaying with the people for the codex. I think I didn't understand it that much. It took me a few turns to kind of be like, oh, that's what we need to do, because I was spending clues to parlay with the one lady, and I was like, wait a minute, I have to do this 4 times? And then I was like, oh no, it's actually well designed. I'm just an idiot. It's actually okay. I'm just stupid and I don't know how it works. It ultimately worked out, and I think it's going to be better on future plays. I liked it. I thought that Blood Money, like I said, it's probably the closest one to the Fine of the 3, but I still think it's a cool finale. On Standard, you get the cool story moment of pushing the guy off the balcony. I think that that's really cool. I'm excited to try that one on Hard, because I do think it is going to be a little bit trickier, especially with a smaller collection. And I think that New Horizons, I think that Blood Money is going to be kind of a harder finale. In like, especially if you're playing on Hard, I think that's I'm very intrigued by it, is really what it comes down to. Again, I'm very intrigued by the whole difficulty stuff, which I'm going to talk about more on the next slide. But overall, I liked all the 3 scenarios. I like the story between them. I love the Charlie Kane cameo, even though we did not earn him. Overall, I liked it. The difficulty in different setups, again, big fan of this one. I think it scales pretty nicely, where it's like, you can see here, it's like the easy version of Julia. It's a 4/6/4, so on 3 players you only need to deal 9 damage to her. She only has elusive patrol, so you can actually just like throw attacks into her, right? Julia Stern, Stalking the Streets, the one on standard difficulty. Still, so still 4 attack. They're all 4 attack to be real. But like you have like 11 health now on 3 players instead. She also gains Retaliate, so you can't just like attack into her to trigger her elusive and then follow her to deal damage, right? The Hard Expert version, she has so she'll have 14 health in 3 players. That's pretty spooky. That's not like unheard of. Like the Ghoul Priest and the Ghost Rider each have 5 per health, so like it's pretty standard. But like we can see here that like she's also dealing 2 damage, so she hits a little bit harder. She still has the Retaliate, and then there's like the snare thing that comes across it, but like it comes across all 3. But that's like the snare value for that's like the set mechanic for that scenario. Overall, I think that this was really good. I don't really have like anything too specific to say. I did like the small little changes. One nice thing about like having a shorter campaign is I was able to kind of like flip through the book afterwards and like not just go like freaking cross-eyed. And I could see that like we chose to kill Julia after the first scenario, and she can show up in the 3rd. This is where I was kind of like talking about how there's like some small little things that I think actually do kind of change things in interesting ways. And I'm intrigued to see how those feel in future plays. Blood tokens. I loved all the encounter cards that were specifically like they scale with the amount of blood tokens that you have on you. I think that there is some really, really neat stuff where the design's very smart, where it's like, if you have blood tokens, bad effect. If you don't have blood tokens, here's a blood token. I think that's really cool. I think all the ways that blood tokens are added into the bag by, like in the first scenario, burning down hideouts, I think is really neat. There is also the the cultist set in this box is actually really cool. And again, I think I want to try to come up with like some house rules to include blood tokens in other ways, because I just think they're really damn good, man. I think the blood tokens are just like, they're really neat. I'm very intrigued by them. I hope they're revisited in some way. I mean, I'm sure you can get like blood tokens another way. I think they're like vague enough that they're not like related directly to vampires. I think obviously like it's easy to like link vampires with blood together and have that be like, oh, they're always like together. But like you could have just like blood for like sacrifices. I think that's like totally legit. And I think that it's just like really damn cool. The set of cultists, back to these guys, I loved the one where it was like they come in with Doom or you seal a blood token on an investigator. Very smart design. I liked the one card that placed a Doom on one of them equal to the number of blood tokens you have, and if you didn't have any, I think you got a blood token sealed. Again, like very smart design with these blood tokens, and I think that there's a lot to kind of explore with them. They're just really damn cool. I loved the one like elite cultist of the cultist set. Like, he's not actually have the elite keyword, so bear with me. I know that's an actual term in Arkham, so I should be careful when I use it. But he was the guy that anytime a blood token was in a test, he put a Doom on himself. I think that was like really cool. I think that the cultist set was manageable, but definitely a little bit risky to keep around, and I think that's really sweet. I want to go back to this one for a second. There was an enemy set, like on easy and standard, you play with some rats, which were like 2-1-3 or like 2-2-3. They're basically very close to Swarm of Rats. They might be 2-1-3. And then on the hard expert, you play with a 3-3-3. And I think that little change is going to add quite a bit of an impact, so I'm very excited to try that out. I'm also curious to see like some sort of like stand hard where you play on hard with, I think there's a lot of customizable stuff. Like you play on hard with the standard token bag, like actually stand hard. I think that there's some really cool stuff, and I don't know how much they need to put in to continue to do this. I think that this would be something that you don't need for like 5 scenario campaigns, but I think if this was a mainstay in the 3 scenario campaigns, I think that would be really cool. I think that would be really cool, when the space allows, of course, because it is a smaller amount of cards. Hey, is that Rotting Remains? Yes! So, Rotting Remains and Grasping Hands made their triumphant return in a way that I actually think fit very well with this campaign. Rotting Remains in specific was a part of the player scaling mechanics that I talked about, where because we had 3 players, or 4 players if you're playing with 4, you include another set of cards in your encounter deck, and one of those was this Rotting Remains, which I think was really neat. Another one was like it deals scaling damage or horror or negative effects depending on the number of blood tokens sealed, and I think that overall it was a very nice addition. It made the scenarios a lot spooky, like a lot spookier, when just like pretty much every scenario had a Rotting Remains and Grasping Hands in it. I brought Joe Diamond to the run, and, you know, he is kind of at the whims of the Mythos phase, and I think that having those cards in there were very, very good. I'm going to do a more in-depth, detailed kind of review on the Treachery cards later on, once I have a few more plays under my belt, but overall, I think that, like, I continue to actually be blown away by the Treachery design for like the most part in these recent expansions. I think that, like, the core foundational stuff I think is very solid, but I think they do their real big, like, masterwork in the campaigns, right? Like, where they can get, like, they can twist the knife a little bit more. I think these new encounter cards are less about, like, being generically there and more about, like, how can we have specific knobs that we twist to impact a scenario. For example, they have, like, the one that is just targeting hands and hand size. They have one that's targeting clues, right? And, like, clues you control. And it's cool that they can, like, put those in, as opposed to be like, here is our like our Chilling Cold set that also discards assets but also increases Shroud for some reason. Like, it doesn't really feel as focused as how the new Treachery designs feel. And I think that ultimately the Treacheries for this campaign, and then also by nature, like Drowned City and Feast of Hemlock Vale, feel a lot more focused. And I think this is also true for in comparison to Brethren of Ash. I think Brethren of Ash, because you're only playing with the core treacheries, is obviously still like good. I think the treacheries come in hard, but you can actually, I think you can really start to feel a more sniper-like, or I guess like surgical precision to how these encounter decks are targeting players, which this is just my blind play, so this opinion might change, but I was very, very impressed with the encounter cards in this box. And I'm curious to see how they feel on higher difficulties. Alright. I don't have too much more to say. I did talk quite a bit for a 3-scenario campaign. I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack here. But as I mentioned at the end of the spoiler-free section, I did really enjoy this campaign. While I may not be like doing backflips about it like I was for Feast of Hemlock Vale, I hope I gave you a perspective on it that obviously showcases that there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in this box. And if any of this vibed with you, I have a feeling that you'll enjoy it, because it is just basic Arkham when it all is said and done. The campaigns aren't trying to do anything that's too over the top or dense. It's just trying to challenge you in a variety of ways with a cool mechanic that is also very easy to grok. And I think that it's a success, and I'm very excited to see the next 3-scenario box. So I'm sorry to those people who, wanted it to suck. I don't think it does, is what it really comes down to. And again, as I stated, if the 3-scenario boxes aren't for you, you know what? That's fine. You just don't need to tell us. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will be doing a few more plays of this, and then as I always do, I kind of go like with my final thoughts after like a few more plays, so that'll come out in the near future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can like, comment, subscribe, join the Patreon if you want to join all the cool names over here. As I mentioned, our gameplay episode is currently live on our gameplay and VOD channel at More Playing Board Games, so you can go check that out. There's a link in the video description. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and as always, a GG's.